We've spent our time thinking about the development of life in just one place here, maybe a little bit here, also Mars, and the potential of life there on Mars. We haven't really talked about anything else in the solar system, but let's talk about them for a minute. Venus, maybe there was something on Venus at one point in time, but with the temperatures and pressures and conditions in that atmosphere, there is no life on Venus. Mercury, way too hot, not anything going on. Giant planets, there's nothing living, floating in the atmospheres of these giant planets. And so what are we left with? Here's the rest of the solar system. Do we have anywhere else to look? The answer is yes. The answer is that these little bodies, these moons around the giant planets, and even some of these objects out here in the outer solar system, the dwarf planets, the Kuiper Belt objects, have potential for also having that key ingredient that we care about, which is, of course, liquid water. Now, liquid water, it's way too cold for liquid water to be at the surface of anything even outside of the Earth. Mars doesn't have any. So these are all quite frozen on the surfaces. But there's a chance, and in fact, in some places we really know, that the interiors of these bodies underneath the icy shell actually has liquid water. Let's look carefully at some of these and understand what's going on. The ones I'm going to zoom in on here and think carefully about are these four, the moons around Jupiter, the Galilean satellites. And I like this plot because you can actually see them to scale. They're big. They're not as big as the Earth. They're not as big as Mars, but they're bigger than our own moon. They are comparable to the size of Mercury, and they have some really interesting properties that make them both fascinating places to study in general, but particularly interested when we're thinking about conditions for life in the universe. Let's talk about some of the most important ones. To start with, they are dynamically weird. They are locked into what is called a mean motion resonance. This mean motion resonance is such that every 4 times Io goes around Jupiter, Europa goes around precisely 2 times, and Ganymede goes around precisely once. It's a 4-2-1 resonance. Callisto, the outside one, doesn't take part, and Callisto, I think it's safe to say, is widely considered the boring of the Galilean satellites. But let's look at the dynamics of this 4-2-1 resonance and understand some of the critical implications for the satellites of Jupiter. First, we have to understand some about the dynamics of a satellite going around a planet. You may know that, for example, on the Earth, the moon has been moving away from the Earth. I think it moves away from the Earth at something like a centimeter per year. And that's a general characteristic of a moon that is going around a planet, and that planet is rotating faster than the moon. And the way it works is, as we know on the Earth, a moon will make tides on the planet. So let's draw a little bit of, now we're going to talk about Jupiter and just Io. We're going to forget the other ones for a minute. Here's Jupiter, large Jupiter, looking down from the North Pole here, and Io is going in orbit around Jupiter like this, and there's a tide, a little tidal bulge. Now, Jupiter's huge, Io's small, so the tidal bulge is not nearly as big as it is on the Earth-Moon system, and again, Jupiter's rotating this way. There's a tidal bulge, but Jupiter's rotating faster than it takes Io to go around Jupiter. Jupiter rotates once every nearly 10 hours. Io takes about 42.5 hours to go around Jupiter. Okay, so Jupiter's whipping around quite quickly. That means that when it makes this tidal bulge, it tries to make it right here where the Io is pulling on Jupiter the most, but Jupiter pulls it forward just by a little bit. So imagine that Jupiter is now no longer round from looking here, but has a slight bulge here. What does that do? Well, that bulge gives a little extra gravitational pull of Io in this direction, adding energy to the orbit of Io. Adding energy to an orbit is the same as increasing its semi-major axis, its distance from the planet, and so Io migrates outward. And this is the same thing that's happening to our moon. We will eventually lose our moon to this process. Okay, that's the start. But then something else happens. There is another moon out here that is locked into this resonance. What does this resonance mean? So Io goes around twice, once around, twice around, comes back to the same spot. In that amount of time, Europa goes around once, comes back to the same spot. They meet again at about the same spot. Now, if Io is being pushed outward, its orbit is slowing, so they're not going to meet at exactly the same spot. They're going to meet with Io slightly behind where it was before. When that happens, what happens? Well, look what happens. This configuration then slows Io's expansion and increases that a little bit of Europa. So Europa moves out a little, Io moves out a little less, Europa starts to move out a little bit, and they stay locked into this resonance. Add Ganymede all the way out here, and the same story applies. Importantly, because they're always coming close to each other near the same position, they're always getting the same gravitational tug at the same position. So the eccentricities of the orbits continue to stay moderately pumped up. Now, they should, because they're in orbit around a giant planet, they should have their orbits tidally circularized. If you just had Io all by itself, it would be in a very circular orbit. There would be no eccentricity at all. But because of this extra resonant interaction and the continuous encountering at the same position, the eccentricities are a little bit high. Let's talk about the consequences of those eccentricities. Again, let's just talk about Io for a minute here, giant Jupiter. Io, when it's close to Jupiter, because it's eccentric, it's closer at one point, it's further at some point. When it's close to Jupiter, it feels a stronger tidal force from Jupiter, and it's squeezed and elongated in this direction, greatly exaggerated. When it's further, it's not as squeezed. It's not as elongated. There's also another issue with the direction that the elongation points as it's moving around the orbit. We're going to ignore that for now. But imagine now that you have this body that's being squeezed and released, squeezed and released, squeezed and released. What's going to happen? Well, that body is going to heat up on the inside. Tidal heating is what we call that. And as a consequence, all of that heat has to come out somewhere. Where does it come out? Well, on Io, it comes out in dramatic fashion. Io is a crazy looking moon. It's the most volcanically active known body in the solar system. The Voyager flyby dramatically discovered these huge plumes of volcanoes, but also just look at the surface. You can see that there is probably a volcano right here that has a plume at some points that leaves this debris on the outside. All of these crazy pizza-looking terrains are different areas where there are volcanic hotspots and flows, probably basaltic flows up through here. Just an absolutely spectacular place, spewing volcanoes. When the Juno spacecraft recently flew by it and looked at the night side, where it normally should be quite dark, it saw this. Just a complete hodgepodge of active volcanic flows, of magma that is sitting on the surface, heating up, that you can see in the night side. All of this is a consequence of that tidal heating of Io, which is a consequence of the eccentricity of Io, which is a consequence of that resonance between Io, Europa, and Ganymede. Without the resonance, Io would be in a circular orbit, and none of this would happen. Europa is very different. No active volcanoes. There were some reports in the past decade that there might be plumes on Europa. You may have heard these reports. These reports were a little bit hard to believe to be correct even at the time, and now they have even been retracted. So there is no evidence for plumes on Europa, regardless of what you hear. But if you look at the surface, it does not look like Io at all. It looks like, well, it's strange in its own way. Look at these things that look like cracks running across the surface. There are interesting discolored regions, and most of it is just bright planes, as we like to call them. What are these bright planes? Well, one way we find out what the composition of something is, as we have done before, is look at the spectrum, look at the sunlight reflected off the surface and see what it looks like. And what does it look like? It looks like these spectra from the Galileo spacecraft that were obtained back in the late 1990s. And these spectra, the solid lines are the spectra of different locations on the surface of Europa. And this dashed line at the top is a laboratory spectrum of frozen water, water ice. The characteristics of water ice that you'll see in a spectrum are this deep absorption at 1.5 microns, this deep absorption at 2 microns, this even deeper absorption at 3 microns, and even this little divot at 1.65 microns. If you see those things and you're used to staring at spectra like this, you say water ice. And let's look. Here are different regions on Europa. That is just absolutely water ice, probably as pure as can be. And these spectra are moving from the most pure to the least pure. Very pure water ice, regions where things get distorted, not quite sure what the water ice is doing. It might be mixed with something. And then regions where it gets really quite distorted. You still see these characteristic 1.5, 2.5, 3, but they just don't quite look the same. And after a lot of study, these areas that looked very distorted like this were found to be something like sulfuric acid mixed in with water. Sulfuric acid, pretty weird to find on the surface of Europa, but it's because of, strangely enough, the volcanoes on Io. Those volcanoes give out SO2 gas. That SO2 gas, as you saw those plumes, gets lofted up into the atmosphere. It leaves Io and gets picked up by the magnetic field and slammed into the backside of Europa, where all of this material is seen best, on the backside of Europa. Those sulfur ions planting into the backside of Europa turn into sulfuric acid, an absolutely crazy set of circumstances. So we now know that the surface of Europa is covered in water ice with some other contaminants on there. Let's look at some of the images of the surface and see what else we might be able to learn. Here's a close-up of just some bizarre looking geology. You start to see now in detail what these cracks are like. These are ridges. You can barely make out the ridges. They actually have a little center ridge in between them, so they're called triple bands. There are things that look like, these are often called pull-apart bands. It looks like something has been pulled apart and material has come up underneath. And this, what the heck is this? This just kind of looks like a smudge. This is ice in the background, but this discolored and disorganized ice region is there. And the fact that it's red, and look at this one is the same way too, the fact that it's red tells you that there's something besides just ice there. What is that something? It's not sulfuric acid. The sulfuric acid is really the whole trailing side, the whole side that's getting bombarded by material from Io. It's not these tiny little regions. There's no way that you would have just this region being bombarded. So this is something, it's thought, that must originate from underneath. There's some sort of reddish stuff that comes to the surface. And maybe these bands have that same reddish material in through here, and they're just crisscrossed everywhere. It's just kind of an amazing, complicated geological place. Here's another close-up region. Again, just amazing. Some of these bands with the coloration coming in through there, and bands that cross other bands. Some of them are older, some of them are younger. You can see some of them displaced. I actually like this one right here. There's a band that's here, and it's right here. It's like a fault on the earth. Clearly, this region has displaced this thing across here. You could probably find other parts where it did the same thing. And my favorite things in here are just these little pits, domes. What do you want to call them? More smudge stuff. They're discolored. They interrupt the ridge terrains. What are they? When people first started seeing these images, all from the Galileo spacecraft, they started speculating, well, maybe these are melt through. Maybe there is water underneath this icy surface, and that water is melting through in some places, and it's bringing materials from the interior and landing on the surface and being discolored. Maybe it's a great idea and seems entirely plausible, but how would you know? Well, let's keep looking. Here's one of my favorite spots on Europa. This area in through here is called the Canamora Chaos region. And first, of course, you see we now know are these big ridges. You can see this one is younger. It goes over the top of this one, which is truncated. They're colored, maybe material coming from the inside. And this region, this is the Chaos region. Chaos is a term that geologists give to places that look like a mess. It doesn't really mean anything else geologically except it's a mess. We're going to zoom in on this. We're going to zoom in on it in black and white. We don't have any color images at a higher resolution, but this is going to be a spectacular place to see even in black and white. There's a lot going on here. Let's see if we can unpack it. First, I don't know, let's find, here's a crack that's relatively new. It runs through a bunch of these old materials. Here's sort of the normal non-chaos side of it up in here. Normal, it's not very normal. And then this, let's look at this crack running all the way across through here and realize that beyond this crack, there's this stuff. What is this stuff? Like matrix. There's these blocks that are in through here, more blocks that are cracked open and in through here, some that look like they're tipped upward blocks. This looks like what you would see at the edge of a glacier on the Earth. You would see the glacier coming down through here. You would see it cracking off. You would see it going into the water. But in this case, it looks like that water then refroze. This looks like refrozen liquid water that these blocks went into. If you sit around very carefully, you can cut out each one of these blocks and put it back together again. You can see where they came from. You can match up all the lines. I can't do it by eye right this second, but it's something that as an exercise I have done before. And you can see that this material used to all be over here and flowed away through something like water, mush. We don't quite know, but it's certainly evidence that there is some very soft material, if not liquid itself, that sometimes makes it up to the surface of the Europa.